Ever since the Blurryface era, 21 Pilots have been in the habit of producing a collection of alternate versions of a handful of their songs. The first of these was released in 2016 in collaboration with a band by the name of Mute Math. The EP they released was appropriately titled Top Times MM. It featured a total of 6 artists, including the drummers from both bands, 5 alternate versions of their songs, 4 from the album Blurryface, and one of which was their latest single at the time, Heathens. Then, from 2019 to 2020, as part of the Trench album cycle, the band produced and ultimately released a new collection, known as the Location Sessions. This featured a series of reconstructed versions of several of their songs, each of which were created on various stops during their Bandito tour. Then, in 2021, alongside the release of their album Scaled and Icy, 21 Pilots put on a live-streamed performance, which itself featured a number of reworked songs and medleys of songs, as well as just some straightforward live performances. And finally, most recently, in 2023, the duo performed at MTV Unplugged. They released a CD of this album, so you can see here, which features 9 songs, reworked, rebuilt essentially live using a number of live loops, keyboards, programming, singing from Josh Dunn, and percussion and live drums mixed together. And several of them were medleys, some of them were just straightforward reconstructed versions of the songs themselves. While nothing has been announced for this current era, the Clancy era, we can certainly hope that the trend will continue and we'll be graced with another set of reworked or reconstructed songs based off of the past years and new ones from Clancy. There certainly are a good number of songs on this album which I'd be very interested to see reworked or rebuilt in the way they've been doing in the past. In the meantime, I set up and conducted a series of polls in which my viewers and subscribers participated in order to determine which of these alternate versions of their songs was the best. So here are the results of those polls, looking at the top 5 alternate songs chosen by you, the viewer. In 5th place, we have the live stream medley mashup of Lane Boy and Redecorate. This was, as I mentioned earlier, featured as part of the live stream performance they did during the Scaled and Icy era. And it was interesting because it was a reworking of Lane Boy, but it also added in parts of Nico and the Niners. And then at the end, the final verse went into that rap from Redecorate. But they also, using the backup musicians and performers, or background musicians and performers that they had during the Scaled and Icy era, they were able to add kind of new and different sounds to the Lane Boy song itself. So it wasn't just purely a medley, it was kind of the bare track of Lane Boy with a bunch more added on. I myself enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it may be my favorite performance from the live stream that they did. In 4th place is the live stream version of Shy Away, and this is one which I initially wasn't going to include in the poll competition because it is more of a straightforward live performance rather than an alternate version or reworked version. But it is alternate enough, and it is often discussed in comparison to the studio version of Shy Away more than other live performances of songs are, that I thought it was worth including, and clearly those who participated also did, since they ranked it 4th overall. The main difference in the live performance of Shy Away, both here in the live stream version and also in different live performances both on tour and on different radio show appearances that they did throughout that era, is that there's more of a scream added in to kind of the climax of the song, which is pretty suppressed and maybe not even there in the studio version. Certainly if it is there, it's very hard to hear. And that's something which a lot of fans really like hearing. I myself think it wouldn't quite have fit in the studio version, so I'm glad they released that version the way they did, but I'm also glad that we have this live stream version as well, because it's quite well done. In 3rd place, and you might start noticing a trend here, is another live stream version. It's a mashup between Migraine, Morph, and Holding On To You. While I do like this performance of these songs quite a lot, and the medley is very well done, including the transitions from song to song, this wasn't my favorite part of the live stream experience, mainly because I wanted to hear these songs more full, as I'm sure many others did as well, but also they weren't exactly alternate versions of the songs. It is a mashup, and they are done differently, so it was worth including, but I certainly don't think I would have ranked this third overall, when you have other alternate versions that I think are quite underrated compared to this. In second place, the trend continues with another live stream version. This time it's Jumpsuit and Heavy Dirty Soul. Now, this is more of an alternate version, even though it is a mashup, because the way they performed these songs was pretty different from the studio version. Again, it's not fully reconstructed, fully reworked, but the way they tie in the Heavy Dirty Soul rap to the Jumpsuit song was quite well done, and I quite enjoyed that. Again, I don't know that I would have ranked this second overall, but I do think it deserved to be top 5, probably. And finally, in first place is, you guessed it, yet another song from the live stream experience. This one is Heathens mashed up with Trees. And this one is very alternate, because it is much more of a stripped down, laid back, almost acoustic version of Heathens that goes into a slower version of Trees. It is an incredible performance. It may be my favorite piece off of the live stream experience, and I do think it deserves to be in the top 5. I'm not sure I would have placed it in first place, but I certainly can understand the impulse to vote it to first. So I'm not necessarily disappointed that that one won overall, nor am I terribly surprised. Just purely out of curiosity, I went back after all the polling was completed and did a breakdown by album to see, or collection, I should say, EP, because not all of these are strictly speaking albums, but just to see which collection overall fared the best. Now, it is worth noting here that the live stream experience had a bit of an advantage, since it certainly is the longest collection of the 4, and therefore had greater odds of winning or performing better. Certainly more votes were going to be cast for that collection. So I didn't do anything to correct for that, so the fact that it ranked first place overall, take it with a grain of salt if you want. But the other 3 are certainly interesting to see how they performed, because they're pretty close in length. In fourth place was the Mute Math sessions, and I definitely think that was not deserved. I think this EP is somewhat ignored, somewhat not acknowledged, at least in recent years. I think when it first came out, maybe more people were interested in listening to it, but now it's kind of fallen by the wayside as we've gone the location sessions and most recently MTV Unplugged, which are closer in style to Mute Math in terms of what the collection is. But I do think it is worth returning to those sessions, because what they were able to accomplish with that many musicians is quite impressive. And it also somewhat marks the beginning of Paul Meany's collaboration with Tyler Joseph, which then spanned into Trench, Skilled, and Icy to a lesser degree, but to a greater degree on the live stream experience rather than the studio album, and then again in Clancy, where he's been working on producing and creating these songs. So it's an interesting piece of 21 Pilots history, and it also is an incredible collection of alternate versions of their songs. In third place, we have the MTV Unplugged collection of songs, and I think I expected this one to rank a bit higher, perhaps second or maybe even first place. I certainly think it is one of my favorites at the moment, perhaps actually my favorite of these collections at the moment, although it kind of flips back and forth between them, depending on the month, really. But I didn't think this one would be so close to the bottom. But again, people weren't voting by album, they were voting by individual songs. So it's hard to necessarily say how people would have voted if I just put all 4 up against each other. But with that being said, I did think this one was going to be a little bit higher. In second place was the Location Sessions, which I think is my favorite vinyl that I own. And I thought this one was going to be second or third, so I wasn't terribly surprised by the ranking there. It is only 4 songs, and it therefore is the smallest collection of these 4. So even despite that, it still ranked quite high, which is interesting to note. And then, of course, in first place was the live stream version. So overall, I was rather surprised by these results. I do think the live stream experience is very well done, and certainly many of those songs deserve to be in the top 10 and several in the top 5. But I did not expect that every slot in the top 5 was going to be taken up by a live stream version. I think Lane Boy off of the Mute Math sessions or Stressed Out off of the MTV Unplugged collection deserved to be in the top 5, if not the top 3. Those are both incredible versions of those songs, especially Stressed Out, which we don't often see reworked or given an alternate version. Other songs like Lame Boy or Ride or, at this point, Chlorine, we've seen redone several times and in numerous different ways. But Stressed Out really doesn't have that many versions. We have the MTV Unplugged one, and then we have the live stream version, which is a bit of a remix, and that was very well done as well. But there's something special about the MTV Unplugged version, which featured Josh Dun singing it kind of in harmony with Tyler Joseph. It was really, really well done. So I expected that was going to be in the top three, or at least the top five. I personally would have ranked that maybe second or third overall. But no, it was just the live stream version, so was not expecting that. But interesting to see, nonetheless. And I do acknowledge that someone could make the argument that the live stream versions deserve to rank better, since they are cleaner in production than these reconstructed versions, which the location sessions and MTV Unplugged were both taken from live performances, so it's harder to have that kind of cleaner feel to it because they were in less controlled environments. The live stream version was a live performance, but it was done by Tyler and his team, so it was much more controlled, and they had a much much more control, much more access to the actual live recording, at least from my understanding of how those performances go. And they weren't stripped back versions with just Tyler or Charler and Josh working multiple live loops and different keyboards and so on, which I personally really enjoy seeing performed and hearing those versions. But I do understand how, from a production and an overall quality of the music perspective, you can make the argument that the live stream version deserved to rank higher because of that. Can't really make the same argument for it against the Mute Math sessions because those were done in a recording studio in a much more controlled environment, even than the live stream experience. But then again, like I mentioned, those are a bit older, and I wasn't terribly surprised that they got a bit overlooked. As I hinted at earlier, my personal ranking differs quite a bit from the results of this polling, and it is as follows. In fifth place, I put the Lane Boy / Redecorate mashup from the livestream version. In fourth place, I had Jumpsuit and Heavy Dirty Soul, again, from the livestream version. But then in the top three, none of them were from the livestream experience. In third place, I would put Stressed Out from MTV Unplugged. In second place, I would put Chlorine from the location sessions. And in first place, I would put the 21pilots combined with Mute Math version of Lane Boy. I think that is the best overall, just in terms of sound, production, creativity, and so on. Now, I may have mentioned earlier that the Heathens and Trees mashup deserved to rank quite high. And I still stand by that, but compared to some of the others, I just couldn't really in good faith put it in the top five. I do really enjoy listening to it, but there are others that I enjoy even more. With that being said, thank you for watching, and be sure to let me know your own rankings of these alternate songs in the comments. And let me know what you think of this different format for video. It's slightly different to what I've been doing in the past. It's a bit more casual, a bit more laid back. So if you'd be interested in seeing more videos in this style, be sure to let me know. And if you really would not, if you think it didn't work at all, let me know that as well. Also, let me know if you'd be interested in seeing a video in which I go through and do a ranking of all of these alternate versions of the songs according to my own personal preference, not based off of the results of this polling. And if you would be interested in seeing the individual results of the polling for each of these songs specifically, just let me know in the comments which song you would like to know about, where it ranked, and I'll let you know. And as always, don't forget to subscribe for more music commentary and reviews.